Okay, so good evening, everybody. Today we are going to try and see a little bit about Midrash this week's Parsha. We're going to try to figure out why did Moshe have to use the snake as the first miracle that he showed to the Egyptians. So before we get into the Midrash, so let's read through the Psukim, and then we'll see what answers we have, and then we'll see what the Midrash has to say. Okay, so here we go. So hopefully these Psukim are familiar. If they're not familiar, not to worry. We're going to go through it, and hopefully we'll hopefully learn something new based on the words we see here. Okay, so I'd like to point out that the Hebrew, we're going to be reading primarily the English, but I'd like to point out that that in the Hebrew the word they use is tanin, as opposed to using the word nachash. So there's two different types of snakes. Unclear exactly, like they're used often interchangeably, but the point being that we're using a less common term when we're talking in the story here. So who would like to read the dramatic showdown? No, I'm seeing Mitchell's scared.
I'll do it.
Yeah, thanks, Elaine.
And the Lord spoke unto Moshe and unto Aharon, saying, and Pharaoh shall speak unto you, saying, show a wonder for you. Then thou shalt say to Aharon, take thy rod and cast it down before Pharaoh, and it became a serpent. And Moshe and Aharon went in to Pharaoh, and they did so, as the Lord had commanded. And Aharon cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and became a serpent. Then Pharaoh also called for the wise men and the sorcerers, and they also, the magicians of Egypt, did in like manner with their secret arts. For they cast down every man his rod, and they became serpents. But Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods, and Pharaoh's heart was hardened. That's as far as that you have there.
Oh, the rest of the bottom part is cut off?
Yeah.
That's a problem. Okay, right, and then there's another little bit, and he hearkened unto them, and he, right, and he hearkened unto them as the Lord had spoken. Okay, I guess I made the font a little off. Okay, right, so basically Pharaoh's unconvinced by this miracle. But the question is, why would this miracle have worked? Like, what's going on? Like, why like it didn't work. So, but what was the thought process? So what do we have? What would we think? First, let's think, what other snakes do we know of?
In the Garden of Eden.
The Garden of Eden, right? So one option we could say is we could look back to that one. But the only thing is that the Egyptians don't care about the Garden of Eden. Oops. Right? That's a slight issue. As much as, it would be interesting if they did, but I'm just not sure that they do. So, but, all right.
How did the Egyptians feel about snakes? Were they gods? Or because you see a lot in Egyptian.
Right. So that is a good. So snakes had a very interesting place in the Egyptian mythology. So both snakes were also the name of the chief evil of Egypt, represented by a snake, but also the snake was also representative as one of the powers of Pharaoh. And actually, he had point in history, but he had a serpent was one of his symbols. So both symbol of evil as well as control over snake is also symbolizing the control of Pharaoh, which may play a role.
Wait, I have something to say. How about why should it turn into some kind of snake tanin for the sake of Paro? Moshe at the sneh, the burning bush, had already tossed down the rod. Why should it change to something else, even though Hashem could change it to anything? Is previously by precedent already been a tanin.
Right. So maybe the reason why it's changing here has nothing to do with Egypt. It's because of what Moshe had done before, right? When Moshe asked for a sign from God,
right?
Right. He was given a snake. So maybe that's the reason. Excellent. Right.
I mean, he could have done something else, and God showed Paro his sarat. Could have happened too.
Right, but then he only ended up doing one, right? So then,
Yep.
right, so this is, so it might be because of what happened before with Moshe and his bad mouthing the Jews, not believing in them, and maybe that will cause it to change here. Definitely an option. So this is what we're thinking in our heads. So now we're going to see what direction the Midrash takes. Okay, we'll see if it's like what we think or if it's not like what we thought so far.
Oh, there's one other thing I've read in the past from a Barbanel. It's not necessarily a snake. It could have been a crocodile.
Right. So that's another option, which would also fit well with the power structure within Egypt, because they did have some of their gods were crocodiles, and also with much a Nile crocodile is much scarier than a snake, because they just really are scarier. Not much. Yeah, they're just scary. That's all I got. Okay, so now let's dive in to the Midrash, and we'll see what does the Midrash give as the reasons. Okay, so so it begins by quoting the pasuk. Right, so that's the first bit over there. Like if people see the bottom here where it says translation from Safari, is that line cut off? Because if so, I'll go back and I'll edit it to make it a little so that we can see that line. Can we see the line at the bottom there, or is that cut off?
It comes and goes with some bar at the bottom.
Okay, fine. So I'll keep my pointer up. That way it won't block it off. Okay, great. Okay, so now we're looking at the. So now we're looking. The Midrash question is why this Tanin? Okay, so somebody like to take it from the second line. It was taught.
Okay, I'll do it.
Thanks,
And cast it down before Paro, and it shall be a serpentine creature. It was taught in a Tanaitic statement, one who stands to pray, even if the king should inquire of his welfare, should not answer. And even if a snake is wrapped around his ankles, he should not cease prayer. What did the sages see to connect this circling behavior of the snake to the sovereign of Egypt? Rabbi Shimon, son of Pazi, says that because it is written, its voice like a snake travels, in Yirmiyahu, just like the snake silences and kills, so too the kingdom of Egypt silences and kills. This is because it puts a person in prison and silences him in order to kill him.
Okay, so what is this referencing and what is going on here? Any guesses? Right, so we're comparing. So there's a couple of things that we need to figure out, right? So one is, why are we all of a sudden bringing up davening in this context, right? And how you won't interrupt for a snake being called around you. This is referring to a non-poisonous snake. It's poisonous, yes, you should. This is just like a garden variety snake. Right? Okay, so somebody messaged in the chat. Okay. Yeah, with silence. Yes, I see somebody responded to the silencing and imprisonment bit. Yes. So as far as that being a new thing, so the answer is it's not a new thing done by totalitarian regimes. It actually goes all the way back to, it happened to Jeremiah actually, which we'll get to in a little bit, right? So being jailed in order to silence you is not new. Unfortunately, it's a tried and true tactic of totalitarian regimes. So we're saying here that the Chachamim are comparing between snakes in Egypt. Why? Because just like the snake coming to bother you while you're davening is there to distract you, so too what Egypt's doing is trying to distract you from what's really happening. So that's why it's a snake, because the snake is what's preventing the Jews from crying out, from praying, and from serving God properly is Egypt. So that's why that's what we're doing here. Does that work? More or less. So seemingly it's something tied to do with the way that Egypt conducts itself, and it silences the opposition. So who do we see this happen to so far? Who we know from the story of from Mitzrayim. So who do we know leaving Egypt who had been tempted to be jailed and had to run away? So the answer is Moshe, right? Moshe Rabbeinu had to run away, right? They tried to silence him, right? He was, leading the opposition, and and they tried to kill him, right? Not quite, jail him, but they definitely tried to kill him. And he had to run away. So maybe that's
Well, later on, when he's going back to Mitzrayim with Zipporah, could have been an allegory, but he was attacked by a Nakash or a Tanin or something, and Zipporah had to save his friend, a serpentine creature.
Right. So So when we say that so the Midrash says that the angel that was swallowing Moshe took. Well, we did this. That was last week's Midrash. I'll send you the link if you're interested. Right. So one of the version is that that swallowed up was a snake. Right. That the angel took the form of a snake and swallowed up Moshe for his not having properly circumcised his son. So seemingly, snakes are very in the imagery surrounding this whole story. Right. So here the emphasis is on silences, on Egypt silences and kills. So now for that, so let's take a look at the actual psukim in Yirmiyahu about the nevuah referring to Egypt, and we'll see how it plays out. Okay, because when you quote this pasuk, right, there's many pasukim you could have quoted that talked about snakes, right? But why specifically this pasuk being quoted from Yirmiyahu? So for that, I am not so knowledgeable of Yirmiyahu that I can quote it backwards and forwards to you. So let's take a look at it inside. Okay, to see why would this pasuk why would this verse be the one that we want to use in terms of comparing Egypt to a snake? Okay.
Are we watching TV? Because Jeremy is sleeping.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I'm gonna mute okay, sorry. Okay, so here we go. So now we're looking at, this is, so a little bit of context here in Yirmiyahu. So during the time of Yirmiyahu, so the Jews weren't properly following Torah and mitzvot, which led to them being attacked by Bavel. Another problem that they had was that instead of turning to God, they turned to Egypt for support. So, and now in that context, so now we have Yirmiyahu saying, don't put your faith in Egypt. They're not going to be able to save you. And that's the background behind this particular nevuah. There's a lot more to it, but we'll go with that, right? So again, there's two major powers at the time. There's Bavel, and then there was Egypt. So the Jews were hoping that Bavel would lose, that Egypt would come and help them and save them from Bavel. But meanwhile, Yirmiyahu is saying that's not really like you have to pray to God, and if you lose the battle, and you're going to lose the battle, you fight against them, you just have to surrender for now, and then eventually they'll fall and you'll be okay. Just that's what you're supposed to do. The Jews didn't do that, which led to a whole bunch of issues. For more on that, I'll discuss that more when we probably approaching the 3 weeks time. We're talking about the Churban. But for now, let's focus in on what bad things that Yirmiyahu has to say about Egypt. Okay, so this is one nevuah, 7 psukim. Hopefully, we'll see and also we'll see where that pasuk that's quoted comes in. Okay, so who would like to read the words of Jeremiah saying how Egypt is a terrible place? No. Oh, thanks, Izzy.
Egypt is a very fair heifer, but the gadfly out of the north has come. It has come. Also, her mercenaries in the midst of her are like calves of the stall, for they also are turned back. They are fled away together. They did not stand, for the day of their calamity is come upon them, the time of their visitation. The sound thereof shall go like the serpents, for they march with an army and come against her with axes as hewers of wood. They cut down her forest, saith the Lord, though it cannot be searched, because they are more than locusts and are innumerable. The daughter of Egypt is put to shame. She is delivered into the hand of the people of the north. The Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, said, behold, I will punish Ammon and Pharaoh and Egypt with her gods and her kings, even Pharaoh, and them that trust in him. And I will deliver them into the hand of those that seek their lives, and into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and into the hand of his servants, and afterwards it shall be inhabited as the days of old, saith the Lord.
Right. So what's going on here? Right. So what's being described here is we have there's a war between, there's Babel and there's Egypt. So who's the one who's described as being powerful? So that's Babel, right? Babel, that's people from the north. They're the ones who are going to win, right? And remember the terms we're using for Egypt are theoretically complementary, but they're really just mocking, right? Notice the use of the word calf might remind you of the golden calf, meaning which is also ineffectual deity, right? Meaning it's idolatry, and it's not actually saving you. It's going to do the opposite. And then we say, and note that the sound. So is normally Egypt would be strong, but in the end, the amount of normally when you have an incoming army, how would you expect it to sound? When you had thousands of soldiers coming with equipment, how should it sound?
Very noisy.
Loud.
Powerful. Yeah.
Right, loud, powerful, noisy, right? But instead, you it's like this weak little hissing noise. It's like, okay, that's not scaring anybody. And then in comes the the powerful Babylonians, and they simply they just crush them to pieces. Right. So then the snake is showing just how you think that you are powerful like a snake, meaning because snake is often used to represent Egypt's strength. But the point is that no, you are actually completely weak, and you're going to be cut down. So, right, so it's very much mocking Egypt, who may have thought that their strength is being a snake. The answer is that nope, your strength is actually nothing. Okay, so that's one reason. Why are they right? So normally Egypt tries to silence people, right? That was what the Midrash had said. The last line of the previous. Let's go back to the previous. Oh, other way. Sorry. Right. So again, right, just like snake silences and kills, so too kingdom of Egypt silences and kills. Right. So who's the one who's being silenced in this case? Right? Who's the one who's ineffectually just making noises and not getting anything done? Right. The tables have turned. Now it is Egypt who's the one who's being ineffectual. Okay. Next, we have, right, so that's one option, right? And the puzzle fits very well because that's right. Egypt's getting their just desserts in Yirmiyahu, right? And it seems like it was hinted to by the Midrash with the snake all the way back when the snake was used as a sign against Egypt. So that's one option. There's another option. There's going to be two more parts. Yes.
Excuse me. Are you saying that the reason why Aaron's rod turns into a nachash is to say to Moshe and Aaron, don't worry, they're going to be weak. They're weak because the snake has weak characteristics as well?
It's also it's not, in this, it's more towards the Egyptians in this case, I believe.
How are they to understand, well, you're really weak like a nachash, because that's not ostensibly the characteristic of a nachash or tanin.
Right. So normally, right, they're using snakes as a show of their power, but it's being turned back on its head and showing how weak they actually are. Right. They're also
if they get that message.
Right. So do they have the message or not? Seemingly they don't really get the message because they don't give it just yet. The Egyptian, it takes the Egyptians a while. If you want to, for more in depth of what point people actually, notice what happens to the Makot, please join me next week, and we'll talk more about that. Also, I'll be doing it for Midrash at Yom Rishon for next week as well. For again, if you would like more details, they should be in the announcements. If not, email me and I will send them your way. Okay. Then we have So that was one is all about the silencing and Egypt being silenced because they try to silence, and now we're inverting that. There's another, but that's one message that's trying to be given across. But there's another option. Okay, this is the second answer given in the Midrash. Okay. So somebody would like to give a stab at the snake.
Another interpretation. What did the Holy One, source of all blessing, is he to see to connect the kingdom of Egypt to a snake? Just like a serpent twists its path, slithers, so too Pharaoh twists his path. For example, acts in a manner most wicked, as opposed to the straight and narrow. Therefore, the Holy One, source of all blessing, is he said to Moses, just like a snake twists, so does Pharaoh twist. When Pharaoh attempts to twist, speak to Aharon, and he will raise the staff against him, Pharaoh, as a message to Pharaoh that from this you shall be struck.
Okay. So here now we're commenting more on the twistedness of snakes and how we're saying that Paro is just as twisted as a snake is. So what does that mean? Like, what do we think? Like, how is this a good, a good sign? Meaning, like, does it work to, demoralize the Paro and the Egyptians?
Well, it's demonstrating to Moshe, to everyone there, and if the Mitzri get the message of the characteristics of the negative characteristics of a snake.
Right. That just like Paro is super sneaky and wicked. So even if you want to try that, you're not going to get anywhere, right? You can try and be as sneaky and twisted as you want. We are still going to beat you. Right? God is still going to swallow him up, just like the snake is going to swallow the other snakes. That's the point of why it's specifically a snake. No matter how twisted you think you are, no matter how much you try and twist and conniving and sly you are, it won't save you, right? Which seems to connect very well with what we mentioned before about this seems to be more connected to the original snake, right? Because the snake was, the most cunning and wiliest of them all. Here it's saying that no matter how wily you are, it's still not, and how wicked you are, it still won't help you in the end. Okay, so that's answer number 2. Okay, let's look at here we go. Okay, here's our third and final option. So here, this is going to be more towards the directly relating to the powers of Egypt, right? So this is okay. So now what's this? So I believe Mitchell, you mentioned before the Barbanel. So would you like to take this and the crocodile? Would you like to take this one? No.
I'll read it.
Thank you, Leah.
Another interpretation. Why was it said to them that the sign would be of a serpentine creature? Because Paro is compared to a serpentine creature. This is as it says, the great serpentine crocodile which dwells within its rivers, the Nile, Yecheskel. When Moses would exit from Paro, Paro would say to Moshe, if you come to me, son of Amram, I will kill him, crucify him, and I will burn him. Wow. Yet when Moshe would later enter, Paro would immediately behave as a staff, rigid and unwilling to act on his threats.
Okay. So
Excuse
this,
me, I find this very interesting. I find this interesting because crucifixion was a method of capital punishment at the time of the Romans. I don't know if it was a capital punishment at the time of the Mitzri
so
with,
let me, so that's the word salav, right? So it could mean crucify. It can also mean hang, depending on the context.
okay, because
So as in,
who's the audience who would read Shmot Rabbah? Maybe it was written down at the time of the
right,
impact
yes,
to Jewish people.
right. So it was that when it was written down, it was post crucifixion for sure. But there were still definitely were public hangings and the like being done to as example, people to show people as an example. So that was definitely happening at this point. But yeah, so you're right. Crucify could just be hang, right? Salav just means ritually easily execute somebody publicly. That's really all it means. It could mean sometimes it means on a cross, sometimes it means by hanging. It depends on the context. For instance, the Aramaic translation of when the sons of Haman were hanged, it uses the word salav. So
Okay.
right, so it means with that public execution.
Thank you.
So yeah, but excellent point. Okay, so now, so what is going on here, right? So why is it specifically using a tanin? Because paro is like a tanin. But it's not. This isn't for the turning into it. The reason isn't the turning into the snake. It's actually the opposite. Is the point here? What this is focusing not on the initial part of where the item turns into a snake, or where the staff turns into a snake. Rather, it's the reverse. It's where we see that Aharon is able to control the snake and turn it back into a staff. So even though Paro is pretending he's this great, scary crocodile or snake, instead, what is he? The tame little stick, right? Not the scary, imposing figure he wants to be. He's just a sad little stick. Okay. So now we have now let's look at the pasuk and then we'll summarize what we've looked at and we'll see which we'll see which idea we like the best. Okay. Next, so now as far as the context of when Yechezkel is talking about Egypt and Egypt being compared to it to this creature. So we have to look in context. Okay. So the English translation uses that's a very interesting translation of the word tanin. This is JPS 1917. Okay. So who'd like to read this version, right? So this is Yechezkel talking about how Egypt is going to be destroyed and how they will not be able to stand up against the very similar context to when Yirmiyahu was speaking from a different angle. Because Yechezkel is having this prophecy as he's heading off to Bavel, supposed to when he's in Israel. So who'd like to give this one a go? Okay. Oh, well, you're muted a second. You go for it, Mal.
Where am I, Chaim?
Top left here, the English for where Yechezkel, chapter 39.
Son of man?
29.
Son of man?
Yep.
Son of man, set thy face against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and prophesy against him and against all Egypt. Speak and say, thus saith the Lord God, behold, I am against thee, Pharaoh, king of Egypt, the great dragon that lieth in the midst of his rivers, that hath said, my river is mine own, and I have made it for myself. And I will put hooks in thy jaws.
Right. So this is Paro anthropomorphizing himself as if he is a great Nile crocodile who controls everything.
Okay.
Okay.
More?
Yeah, keep reading. Yeah.
Okay. And I will put hooks in thy jaws, and I will cause the fish of thy rivers to stick unto thy scales, and I bring thee up out of the midst of thy rivers, and all the fish of thy rivers shall stick unto thy scales. And I will cast thee into the wilderness, thee and all the fish in thy rivers. Thou shalt fall upon the open field, thou shalt not be brought together nor gathered. To the beasts of the earth and to the fowls of the heaven have I given thee for food. And for all the inhabitants of Egypt shall know that I am the Lord, because they have been a staff of reed to the house of Israel. When they take hold of thee with the hand, thou dost break and rend all their shoulders. And when they lean upon thee, thou breakest and makest all their loins to be at a stand.
Okay. So what's going on here? Right. So this is even harsher than what the Midrash says. Right. So how did Paro purport himself, and what happens to that view he had of himself? Paro took himself to be the great god of Egypt, the all-powerful crocodile, who everything in Egypt lives and dies at his whim and thanks to his power. Right, and the power of Paro also stems from the Nile. So instead, what is Hashem saying? Hashem is saying that he's taking all the things that Paro thinks are his power and turning them all on their head. We have him going from being a great dragon, or the great Nile crocodile on the one hand, and then slowly but surely, everything that makes him great gets wilted away. First, we take away his river. Then we take away his jaws. Then we take away the fish that had been in his river, and that had fish on the scales, and how that works out. That's I'm not entirely sure what that is, but being I think it's that that all of the fish come from the Nile, and that Paro is the one who makes them have a bountiful fish harvest. So basically saying that all of those blessings that you think you control are all actually being thrown out of the Nile. The Nile has no power, you have no power, and rather the wild beasts and birds are going to eat you.
I have a question here.
Yeah.
Why is Yechezkel, as a Navi, giving Nevuah, or why is he giving an explanation to the past when a Navi tends to give a portent or a Nevuah for the future? Any idea?
Oh no, like he's talking to the Egypt of his time period. This is the Egypt of of right before the destruction of the first temple. He's telling them this. The imagery could very well be used the same then as it is now. As meaning the imagery that's being used by Yechezkel, that very same image and message could have been applied, may have been what the intent was by the first time we saw talk about a snake in Egypt, which was by the time of Paro and leaving of Egypt, right? So we're saying that even though they're two different pharaohs that are several hundred years apart, but the way that they purported themselves was similar, and. Right, so then this is talking about the pharaoh at the time of when he's fighting. This is the Egypt against Babel, opposed to the Egypt who's fighting God back in the time of leaving of Egypt, right, when Moshe is around. So, but here he's saying that, but you'll notice that there's a lot of parallels also, right, with our Midrash. Right, you also see that he goes from being a snake. What happens? He initially is a Tanin, and in the end, what does he become? Right, he's thrown out of the river. Right, loses all of his power, and what does he look like at the end? It's even stronger of transition that we have in the Midrash. Right, the Midrash says that you go from being the crocodile, from being the snake, to being a staff. So here, not only are you a staff, it's worse than a staff. Right? Well, you switch into being not only are you a staff, you're a right, that you're a mishenet kaneh, you're a reed staff. So then you're not even like one of those, a good trusty staff that you can use for things. A reed staff is quite useless, right? If you try and put your weight on it, it's going to break, right? It does not do anything that you would hope it would do, which is ironic as well as unfortunate. That you think you're gonna get all this, support, everything from this, but the reality is that it's not going to help you whatsoever. It's just going to hurt you. So it seems like what our Midrash is quoting was actually, didn't pick a good pasuk for this Midrash to support it. What do we think? There was a pasuk that's quoted in the same vein as the Midrash that it's trying to point out. What do we think? Right. So again, the story that we had in Yechezkel is that of the snake turning into a weak reed staff, and here we have the snake turning into a scared stiff. So would that be a good pasuk to bring us to support, we think? What do we think? I'd say it fits pretty well. Okay, so now now I'm going to quickly run through the three answers that the Midrash had, and then we can all decide which one, and we'll decide which one we like the best. Okay, so again, so the first one was is that Egypt had made sure to silence opposition, so like a totalitarian regime, and now this is simply God saying, you tried that, and now instead you're going to be silenced instead. We saw the pasuk in Yirmiyahu where we saw that Egypt thought that there being a snake was a strength. Turns out that that's actually a weakness that gets trampled. And we said another option was in terms of the twistedness of a snake, and saying that no matter how twisted Egypt tries to be, they will still lose out to God, because no matter how evil and twisted you try and be, you can't get out from God's control. Okay, and the third answer was that even though Paro thinks he's mighty like a serpent, in reality, when push comes to shove, and he's face to face with a strong power, meaning with God, the reality is what's he going to be? Right? He was posturing, saying, "Oh, I'm going to beat him." What actually happens is he's scared stiff, and he can't do anything. Similar to what happens to the nevuah that Yechezkel has. He says that that even though Egypt purports itself to be so strong, the reality is that they're just a weak reed staff that's going to break. Okay, so those are our three reasons. So which one do we think? So which one do we like the best? So everybody can decide on their own. But so that is why a snake. Again, it's because we are turning the symbol of potential strength of Egypt on its head, and the question is, how does turning that symbol around serve to both show God's power as well as show why Egypt is truly wrong? Okay.
1 second.
Yes.
Question.
Please.
So when you say reed staff and the reed staff breaks, isn't the reed sort of flexible? So like collapses more than breaks, or is that you just using that term interchangeably, or am I mistaken?
I'm using the term interchangeably.
Okay.
Point being that the verse there says that if you try and support yourself on a reed staff, it's just going to snap. Right. It won't.
Right. Okay. It's not going to support your weight.
Correct. Right. What you're looking for in terms of when the Jews in the time of shortly before the destruction of the first temple, they're looking to Egypt as a support of strength. And you will just ask Yirmiyahu with different imagery or explaining why it's a terrible idea and it's just going to work out. It's not going to work out the way they want it to.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, go.
Any other questions? Okay. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming. I will. Yes.
I have another question.
Okay, go for it.
Just one more question, like Columbo. Just one more question. Okay, but the snake was used as a lot of different symbols, and so like I'm just thinking of the Nachash and Achoshet, and like and the
That's an Achash. This is a Tanin. But yes,
okay.
you're right. Yes, it is used in many different contexts. You're correct. But here, the question is, why specifically a snake associated with Egypt? Because God could have chosen. There's a lot of other important, powerful animals quoted throughout. But why specifically a snake? And why a snake for Egypt?
Okay.
So that's what we're trying to figure out, right? Because
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
How often is Tanim mentioned in the Chumash?
That is an excellent question. I can do a quick search on that one. One moment. I'm going to go get my. All right, ran to get my my concordance. To check the exact number of times. I know it comes up in Breshit. Let's look at the exact full list. So Tanin comes up 14 times in Al Tanakh. It comes up in the Tanim Agdolim in Breshit when God creates the world. It comes up now. It comes up in Yechezkel, what we quoted. Comes up in Dvarim Chamatan Miminam. But it's not the most common. It's not a very common word. Nachash is much more. It comes a lot more than Tanin does.
And in Yechezkel, they translate it as a dragon.
Yeah, I'm not sure where they got that one from.
Okay.
And that's why these translation, one of the other options was like what was quoted in the Midrash, versus that translation from Svaria said crocodile, because dragons aren't really a mythological being that Egyptians had. They had many other mythological being type things, but dragons they didn't really have. So yeah. Oh, for more on that, in a week and a half, I'll be giving you. I'll start a series on supernatural beings in Judaism. So we'll eventually get to dragons. That's towards the end of the series. For those who are interested.
Wednesday,
Yes, a week from Wednesday.
next
Yes.
week.
Next week, yeah.
Angels
Yes.
and demons.
Angels and demons. We're gonna get through all the fun stuff. Don't worry.
It's in my calendar already.
All right. If you have anything particular you want to make sure that I cover, let me know which thing you're curious about, and I'll make sure to address it. Because there's a lot. I could talk about angels for months and months and months. So just let me know your question you have about angels. Let me know, and I'll make sure that I get to it as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care, everybody.
Okay, good night
Have a good night.
Right.
and a good Kodesh.